Hi everybody, Dr. Ellie Stein here with a video called Incandescent versus LED Take Two. I recently put up a video that was sloppily done. I was trying to use a bit of humor. It did not land. I got some criticism. It was valid, and so I'm taking it down and replacing it with this more fact-based video. So the purpose of the video is to compare both the effects on the environment and the effects on human health of incandescent versus LED bulbs. One of the biggest differences between the two is the type of light they produce. So incandescent bulbs have a flatter frequency spectrum, including visible light and moving into the invisible infrared range, whereas LED bulbs have very sharp peaks in the visible range. For this reason, LEDs are much more energy efficient. Of the energy going into the bulb, 95% becomes visible light. So you don't need a lot of power to create a good amount of light in your house. Contrarily, or in contrast, incandescent bulbs produce a lot of invisible infrared light, which is also experienced as heat. So they're much less efficient. And some estimates say that as much as 90% of the emissions of an incandescent light bulb are in the form of heat. The heat that's emitted and the increased energy that's required to power the light bulb is what makes them environmentally problematic. In addition, if we look at the lifespan of the light bulbs, the incandescent actually, bulb for bulb, has a smaller energy footprint in the manufacturing process than the LED. But incandescent bulbs don't last nearly as long. So over the lifespan of one LED bulb, you might use anywhere between 10 and 50 incandescent light bulbs, depending whose estimates you feel are the most accurate. So that means although the energy footprint per bulb is less for incandescent, if you add up all of the bulbs needed to replace one LED, that footprint gets pretty big. I've already mentioned the energy inefficiency. That's probably the biggest attraction of people to LED bulbs because their lighting bills go down. And then when you get to the end of the lifespan, again, incandescents have a small advantage because they don't generally contain toxic metals and rare earths, whereas LED bulbs do. So this means when you go to throw the bulb out, when it does finally die, incandescents are generally safer and easier to dispose of. However, because you've used many bulbs to equal the lifespan of one LED, the sheer volume of garbage is greater. So from an environmental perspective, I don't think there's any argument that LED lights are way in the lead. They're much friendlier to the environment. However, that's not the only metric that we need to consider. It turns out that the red and infrared light that's produced by incandescent bulbs has significant health benefits. That light activates mitochondria and allows them to work more efficiently and produce more energy. It's becoming increasingly clear that we need efficient energy-producing mitochondria to stay healthy, and virtually all chronic diseases, especially the most common and scary ones like cancer, dementia, heart disease, and diabetes, are all associated with mitochondrial dysfunction. It's thought that our indoor lifestyle, which blocks us from getting access to all of the rays that the sun has to offer, is contributing to the epidemic of chronic disease experienced especially in developed countries. It turns out that most of us spend at least 90% of our time inside. The invisible wavelengths don't make it through glass, so we're dependent on our sources of indoor lighting to keep our mitochondria running, and LEDs do a really horrible job at this. So we're left with this really serious dilemma. Do we favor LED lights because we want to save the planet? Or do we favor incandescents because we want to save ourselves? Now, people who are way smarter than me working in the field are trying to find ways to combine the two so that we can have perhaps more of the sun's rays that we need coming through glass. So changing how we make and use glass, and also changing the type of lighting we use in our indoor environments so that it's healthy for us and the environment. So I hope that clarifies my previous video. Basically, I'm trying to make people aware that although LED lights are a huge step ahead for the environment, they are really problematic for human health. Some people are giving the metaphor or the comparison to people 300 years ago that died of scurvy due to lack of vitamin C. That's how foundational the sun's spectrum of light is for our health, and we need to find a solution.